Before I start this video proper, I would like to address Quentin Tarantino directly. I'd like you to know that I'm an Israeli. You live in Israel right now. So if by any chance you find this video, nothing would make me happier than to invite you to a cup of coffee, maybe even to dinner. It's on me. Just to have a chance to sit down, spend some time with you, to talk to you. Nothing would make me happier. I'm a big fan. I love all your movies. Just getting it out there. Who knows? Maybe something will come of it. Probably you're not even going to see this video. But hey, worth trying anyway. So, with that being said, hello everybody. My name is DB, and welcome to the first episode of the Cinema Connoisseur podcast, which is something new that I'm trying on my YouTube channel. In this specific one, I take a film director, namely Quentin Tarantino, and I rank his films from my least favorite to my most favorite. So, Quentin Tarantino, the greatest Israeli director of all time. Everybody knows who he is. He has made many great, famous, iconic films. If I could sum up Tarantino's career in one sentence, it would be that his entire career is one big tribute to film, to cinema, to the history of cinema, which is a big reason why I really, really like him and his films, because I really like movies. I like the industry, I like the art, I like the stories, I like the techniques behind it. I love everything that is film. And Tarantino loves it too. He loves it a lot. He made a career out of loving film, which is also inspiring and also really relatable to me. His biggest trademarks are amazingly written dialogue, non-chronological storytelling, large ensemble cast, and hyper-stylized violence. Sometimes really, really gory, but always very, very violent and stylized. Also, his characters like to say the N-word a lot, but that's just a minor point. So, without further ado, let's begin the ranking from my least favorite Quentin Tarantino film to my most favorite. And I say least favorite to most favorite and not worst to best because I don't think he's really made a bad film. But something has to start this list. Something has to start at the bottom. And for me, my least favorite Tarantino film is also his latest film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
What the fuck was that? Jesus Christ! Fuck!
I saw this film in theaters and I remember being rather disappointed by it. However, I have rewatched it since and it has gotten a little bit better in repeated viewings, but it's still my least favorite Tarantino film. Basically, it's Tarantino's tribute to the actual setting of Hollywood in the 60s. And that's by far the best thing about this film, the recreation of the setting and the time. The recreation is done really well, and it's apparent how much passion was put behind the recreation of the setting. However, the characters that inhabit this world, while they seem very interesting on the surface, they don't really do a lot in the film. And that's something that you can say about other Tarantino films, but in this film, more than in any of them, my biggest problem with it is that everything feels really inconsequential. From the moment the movie starts till the moment the movie ends, you don't feel like something of substance actually happens. So on one hand, it's very meditative pacing, which I admire, but it doesn't really amount to anything at the end. The acting is good, the cinematography is okay, but it's really the story, the lack of actual stakes. That's my biggest problem with it. You also have Margot Robbie as Sharon Tate. Now, if you know the real-life story, then you would expect something to happen, but it doesn't happen in this film, which by itself is nothing wrong with it, but then when you really think about it, what does Sharon Tate do in this film? What is her purpose? She doesn't really have a purpose. She's just there, and you just see her doing stuff, and nothing really comes of it at the end. So it's a time capsule of a movie. I like it. I like spending time in the world. But in relation to the rest of his filmography, I have to say it's my least favorite. Moving on to number 8. The first one was number 9. You've noticed that I have 9 slots in this list, but hey, you would say, Tarantino has directed 10 films. Why do you have 9 slots? Well, because 2 of his films I put in 1 slot, and you can guess which 2 films I'm talking about. But we'll get there when we'll get there. So number 8 right now, and I think number 8 is going to be the most controversial pick on my list because a lot of people rank this film much higher than I did. But to me, this is where it lands. It's Inglorious Bastards.
Ooh, that's a bingo.
Tarantino's humongous Nazi bashing fantasy epic. Here's the deal with this film, okay? My biggest problem with this film, and the thing that brings it down so low for me, is that I didn't relate to almost any of the characters in the film. The most relatable character, the most likable character, the most charming character is Hans Landa, played by Christoph Waltz, who is a Nazi officer. Yeah, so the most charming, most likable character is a Nazi. So how likable can he actually be? Not a lot. On the other hand, you have the Allied forces, you have the good guys. However, the good guys in this film don't really act like good guys. And it's a testament to how good this film is. The film is incredibly well made, all right? The technical prowess on display might actually, on an objective scale, this might actually be Tarantino's best ever film. But this is my personal list, it's my personal taste. And when you have a film filled with unlikable characters, filled with characters whose primary motivation for doing the things that they do is pure and utter hatred, it's hard for me to relate. It's hard for me to attach myself to any of the characters. And that's a big downside for me. So I pretty much just watch a really long 2.5-hour film filled with a bunch of characters that I don't like. And near the end, almost all of them end up dead for various reasons. So I don't feel like I went on a worthwhile journey. Of course, it's very well made. It's really great at building tension and suspense. It's by far Tarantino's most suspenseful film. You have the opening scene, which is famous. You have the scene at the underground bar, which is great. But at the end of the day, the film just is a little bit too unpleasant for my taste. Now, I like unpleasantness from now and then, but in here, it works a little less for me. Funny story about this film, by the way. When I first watched it in theaters, for some reason, don't ask me why, I thought this was based on a true story. I thought that the bastards were actually real-life people who actually existed, and Hans Landa was a real-life person. And I thought this throughout the entire film until the very end, where something happens to Adolf Hitler. And when it happens, I was like, oh, wait. Okay, maybe this isn't based on a true story after all. So, yeah, Inglorious Bastards, really well made. I can definitely understand if people put it much higher on their personal lists. But for me, number 8 is where it lands. This brings me to the next one, number 7. And number 7 is probably the film that is regarded as probably his worst, which is Death Proof. I really like Death Proof, okay? I like all of his films. The bottom 2 I like less than the top 7, is the way I'll say it. So, excuse my pauses. English is my second language, so excuse me if I mumble a little bit or if I have some pauses. I'll try my best to not do that a lot. So, number 7 is Death Proof. It's Tarantino's tribute to Grindhouse, B-movie horror films, and also classic highway action films, because Death Proof is a film that is split in two. Right down the middle, you have the split. The first half is a B-movie horror film, and the second part is an action highway speed chase car movie. It's by far Tarantino's simplest plot yet. Death Proof is very straightforward, very simple, very to the point, and this works to the film's advantage. The two halves don't really have anything in relation to each other. The only thing that the two halves have in common is Kurt Russell's character, Stuntman Mike, who is a really fun character. Now, the film is about Stuntman Mike, who is a guy who likes to drive this stunt car, and he likes to kill women. Very pleasant, but the film is made in a really cheeky tone, and he gets his comeuppance at the end, so that's great. Now, the first half, the B-horror movie half, has intentional editing mistakes and is artificially grainy in order to reproduce the visuals of classic low-budget B-horror films, which is really, really fun. And the second half has one of the greatest car chases in cinema history, with really great stunt work from everyone involved. So the film has a lot of action. It has some very violent and gory scenes. It has some really funny scenes, and the dialogue is great. Everything is really good in this film. The only problem I have with it is that it's really simple, very bare bones at the end of the day. Sometimes that's all I need, and that's when I watch Death Proof, but I can't really say that I got a lot out of it more than the other films that are higher up on the list. So Death Proof, just a solid, really fun, great film. But it lands on number 7. Quentin Tarantino has made a lot of good films, guys. Moving on to number 6. Number 6 is The Hateful Eight.
Let's slow it down. Let's slow it way down.
The Hateful Eight is Tarantino's only pure Western. I'll reiterate that when we move to Django Unchained, but it's his only pure Western. And Westerns is one of my favorite genres in film. So it was really, really nice to see Tarantino make a pure Western. Also, the film is really a return to Tarantino's roots. His first film, Reservoir Dogs, takes place in one setting. It's a very down-to-earth, small-scale film. And since then, he's made a lot of epics, but The Hateful Eight brings it down. The whole film takes place in one setting. It's a nice change of pace for his career. This allows for a lot of intricacies in the dialogue and the character relationships. They're written really well, and it's really beautiful to behold. The cast is excellent. Everyone does a really good job. Like in all of his films, Tarantino's casting is one of his really, really strongest points. And he does, again, a really good job here. Now, in this film, you have the addition of the composer, Ennio Morricone. If you don't know who he is, he's one of the greatest composers of all time, basically. He composed The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. You know, the classic spaghetti westerns, that's him. He also made the music for the Thing remake, which is just incredibly awesome. So Ennio Morricone does the soundtrack for this film, and the soundtrack is, of course, excellent. The thing that I really like about this film is the small character interactions between the characters. It really shows their personalities wonderfully. Kurt Russell's character in this film and Daisy Domergue, the woman he's trying to get to the sheriff to hang, he hates her guts. But you have these moments here and there when he's like treating her a little nicely. You see that maybe there is something more there. It's not fully explored, but you don't need to fully explore it. You just need these small intricacies in the interactions to make the characters three-dimensional, and this film does these small intricacies really, really well. Samuel L. Jackson is great. Tim Roth is great. Surprise cameo appearance from an actor that I won't say who he is, but that was also pretty funny. Just overall, solid, really enjoyable film. Now, this film also, all the characters just hate each other's guts. All the characters' motivations is primarily from hate. So what's the difference from this and Inglorious Bastards? Well, for my money, the difference is that in here, the characters actually have an arc. They change. They start the film by hating each other, but some of the characters actually start to develop some bonds of friendship. And that's really nice to see. The other problem that I have with this film is that it's a tad long, although I was never bored. So The Hateful Eight, really good, really solid, number 6 on my list. And with that, we get to the top 5. And at number 5, what is, I believe, Tarantino's most underrated film, Jackie Brown.
If you had the chance, unemployed now, to walk away with $500,000, would you take it?
The reason why not a lot of people talk about Jackie Brown is because, in regards to his other films, it's a lot more subdued, a lot less stylized. I know that's probably not the best way to say it, but that's the way I'm going to say it. It's Tarantino's tribute to the blaxploitation films of the 70s. And the ultimate tribute is by casting Pam Grier as the lead character, who was also the lead character in some of the greatest blaxploitation films of yesteryear. This was very purposeful casting, and she does a really, really good job yet again. This movie really grows on me. The first time I saw it, I was bored. You know, not a lot to talk about, just the standard crime drama. But the more I watch it, the more I just, I really like the characters in this film. I like Jackie Brown. I like Samuel Jackson's character, although he's a scumbag, but I like his character. And I like the story. It's a simple story, but it's really effective and efficiently told. It's just a really well-made, straight-up crime drama. And you have some funny moments, and you have some thrilling moments. You have some surprises. Just an all-around good film, great characters, great cast, great soundtrack. I really like the soundtrack. Across 110th Street, Street Life, really good songs. Street Life, for the longest time, I just assumed she was saying Street Light. I don't know why. If I have one major problem with this film is that it has some actors in it that I think are criminally underused. Specifically, Robert De Niro and Michael Keaton. They're both there. They're both great actors. They both had excellent performances before and after this film. But for some reason, in this film, they're there, but they don't do almost anything. They do a solid enough job, but they, for their caliber, I expected more. But alas, no film is perfect. And if this is really the biggest problem, then you're in a good spot. So Jackie Brown, number 5. Moving on to number 4. For me, it's Django Unchained.
You kill people, and they give you a reward?
Certain people, yeah. Bad people.
Badder they are, bigger the reward.
Django Unchained, the first Western Tarantino's ever made. Now, I remember when it first came out, the trailers came out, and I saw that Tarantino was making a spaghetti Western type film. Spaghetti Westerns. I love spaghetti Westerns. And I love Westerns, but especially spaghetti Westerns. And I know that Tarantino loves spaghetti Westerns. So I thought to myself, yes, this is exactly what I want. This is what I've been dreaming of, Tarantino making a spaghetti Western. And I saw it, and it was everything I dreamed of. It was Tarantino making a spaghetti Western. Back then, almost 10 years ago. Wow, time flies. But almost 10 years ago, that's what I thought. But the more I rewatch it, the more I find the film to be much more of a slavery movie than a spaghetti Western. I find it has much more in common with, for example, 12 Years a Slave than The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. It's definitely inspired by spaghetti Westerns, but when I watch it, it's the vibes that I get are much more of just a drama about slavery. And as far as slavery dramas go, Django Unchained is really well made. I think that Jamie Foxx in this film is excellent. At first, for some reason, I don't know why, I thought he was rather dry. I thought he was a rather uninteresting protagonist, but I don't know why I thought that. Now, thinking about it more and more, I just think he did an excellent job. His character growth is incredible. And all the little details, like when he drinks his first beer, the way he talks to people at the beginning of the film and the end of the film, you see how he grows. Really, really well done. The other great performance is Christoph Waltz as Dr. King Schultz. I like him much more in this film than in Inglorious Bastards. Really great character. I just love the characters in this film. But of course, the highlight is Leonardo DiCaprio as Calvin Candy, one of the nastiest, most vile, despicable villains of all time. And DiCaprio brings a monster of a performance. My one problem with the film is that it starts off really, really, really slow. But from the moment Leonardo DiCaprio joins the film, joins the actual plot, then the movie kicks into high gear and wow. Wonderful stuff. It's a very difficult subject matter, but it's told in an accessible way, and I really appreciate that. Because sometimes slavery movies, but in general, also Nazi movies, if we talk about Inglorious Bastards, just movies about really tough subject matters, sometimes it's really hard to watch. Sometimes you're up for it, but sometimes you're not. And this is a film that I'm always up for, no matter what. The action is great, the soundtrack is great. It is inspired by spaghetti westerns, and you do have the gunfights, and you do have all the action scenes, and it's really well done. Polished with the usual Tarantino blood spurts that we all know and love. So Django Unchained, really enjoyable film, really well-made film. I love it a lot, and it's at number 4. Which brings me to the top 3. Now, the top 3 can always change. They always move places over and over again. I try to base this list on how it usually goes for me, you know, a mixture of my gut instincts and also what I usually choose. So, number 3 for me is Tarantino's debut, Reservoir Dogs.
You don't care they're counting on your tips to live?
You know what this is? It's the world's smallest violin playing just for the waitresses.
Which is one of the greatest directing debuts of all time in terms of announcing your arrival by making a narrative and stylistic statement. Tarantino just popped out of nowhere and was like, bam, I'm here. You know, it was revolutionary. When this film was released in 1992, audiences had literally never seen anything like it. Fun fact, Reservoir Dogs was the first film that my parents saw in theaters after I was born. They wanted to go on a night out. They wanted a break from me. So they went to the movies that they saw, Reservoir Dogs. They were hit with something that they weren't expecting. I mean, they didn't expect the film to be this violent, and it's a violent film. Reservoir Dogs is a film about acting, and it's not a really big surprise. Considering how Tarantino wanted to be an actor. It's Tarantino's tribute to acting. You can see it in most obviously with the story of Mr. Orange. And you have the story within a story as he tries to prepare for meeting them, and he needs to try to convince them that he is a criminal. So he tells them a story that doesn't exist. It's fictional, but the movie puts you inside that fictional story. Acting is life in this film, in their entire filmography. In his entire filmography, Tarantino has characters pretending to be other characters all the time in his films. In The Hateful Eight, you have a bunch of people pretending to be something they're not. In Inglorious Bastards, you have a bunch of allied forces pretending to be Nazis. A lot of characters in Tarantino's films use acting as a way to hide their identity, as a way to hide their motivation. And Reservoir Dogs is where it all started. The storytelling in this film is off the chain. His first ensemble cast does an excellent job. Harvey Keitel, Steve Buscemi, Tim Roth, Michael Madsen, I think his name is. I mean, they're all really, really good. They all work together well. Each character has a purpose, except for Mr. Blue. And and the film just builds and builds the tension. You have a lot of violence in it. You have great soundtrack, and it builds to a crescendo of an ending. It's also on the short side of his filmography. A lot of his films are really, really long. This is really short, really to the point, short but exquisite. Reservoir Dogs, great film. I can watch it over and over again. Never get tired of it. Highly recommend it. It's a number 3. All right. By now, by process of elimination, you should know what are the top 2 for me. But the only question is, what is the order? At number 2 for me is Pulp Fiction.
Who told you?
They?
They talk a lot, don't they?
They certainly do. They certainly do.
What else is there to be said about this film? Pulp Fiction is a legendary film. It's iconic, critically acclaimed beyond measure, and all of it is warranted. If it's not a masterpiece, then it's pretty damn close to it. The way I describe Pulp Fiction is like it's like Reservoir Dogs but bigger. And it fits my personal taste a little bit more because I like big epics when they're done well. And Pulp Fiction, I wouldn't call it a big epic, but you have a bunch of stories in there with a bunch of characters, and it's told non-chronologically, and everything just molds together into one coherent experience. And it's just amazingly well done, amazingly entertaining. The dialogue is one of Tarantino's biggest strengths. And in Pulp Fiction, wow. You can quote this film all the way to oblivion. It's iconic for a reason. But something that not a lot of people talk about when they talk about Pulp Fiction is the world building. One of my favorite aspects about this film, Tarantino builds a culture in this film. You know, you have Jackrabbit Slims. When they walk inside that restaurant, you feel like it's a real place. You spend time there. You get to understand the vibe. You get to understand the idea behind it. It's a completely fictional place that Tarantino has built from the ground up, and it's excellent. It also just seems like a really fun place, especially for a movie geek like myself. So I just love spending time in the world that Tarantino built. The cast is excellent, of course. Samuel L. Jackson, probably with his greatest performance ever. The story of John Travolta, how this movie kind of kick-started his career back, restarted it. The characters are original and they're intriguing. And when you want to talk about the emotional weight of the film, you have Bruce Willis and Fabienne, his girlfriend in the film. The story of his watch, of the gold watch, is just wow. I mean, the way Christopher Walken just comes up and tells the story, it's emotional, harrowing, but it's also hilarious at the same time. Everything just works together. And when Bruce Willis's character realizes that Fabienne forgot his watch at the house where the gangsters are looking for him, and he realizes that he doesn't have it and he needs to get back there, his reaction is just raw emotion. And you can feel it, man. You can feel it. Butch's story really resonated with me. The one more thing I want to say is the soundtrack is amazing. I listened to the soundtrack without even watching the film. The soundtrack is just great. So Pulp Fiction has everything going for it, but it's not number one. Because for me, my favorite Tarantino film, the number one spot, my favorite film is actually two films. Two films that I can't separate between them. They're both one big film for me. They both tell one big story. And that story is the story of Kill Bill.
You didn't think it was going to be that easy, did you? For a second there? Yeah, I kind of did.
Kill Bill, for me, is Tarantino's magnum opus, his masterpiece, his undisputed champion. It's Tarantino's tribute to Japanese samurai films, okay? Which is also another genre that I really like. But this is really the film where all of his signature trademarks mesh together in order to create the Tarantino style that we know and love today. Before that, you had one style. You had the Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, Jackie Brown type of filmmaking. Crime dramas, pretty down to earth. Kill Bill is the movie where everything just exploded. The action is incredible. It's frenetic. It's visceral. The style of the film is amazing. It's really original. There's nothing a lot like it, except for the following Tarantino films after Kill Bill, but this is where it started. It's an epic revenge story. Uma Thurman's character wants to kill the person and the people responsible for massacring her friends and her would-be husband and her baby. They wanted to kill her too, but she survived, and now she's up for revenge. She wants to kill them all. It's an epic revenge tale, but it also keeps the small emotional scenes intact. It doesn't skip them. It doesn't gloss over them. It's there, and it's felt. The quest that Uma Thurman's character goes through is an epic story. It's a timeless story. A timeless story of a woman seeking justice for the wrongdoings of evil men and women who harmed her. That makes her a great, great, great female lead character. Let me talk about this for a second, okay? I forgot to talk about this with Jackie Brown because she's also a great female lead. But let's talk about The Bride. This character is a martial arts expert. She knows how to use a samurai sword. She knows how to kill. She's a monster, okay? But that's not what makes her great. That's not what makes her a great character. What makes her a great character is her determination, her drive, and her desire to seek vengeance on the people who killed her unborn child. It's motherly rage. She feels real because her motivations are realistic. She's a mother. She's a woman and a mother, first and foremost. She's a psycho killer later, but she's a woman and a mother first. That's one thing. The other thing is that she's not perfect, and she faces a hell of a lot of adversity in order to reach her goals. My big problem with female leads today is that filmmakers tend to believe that if you have a woman in a film and she has even a single flaw, that's a problem. And it makes her a weaker character because she has a flaw. No. It makes her a stronger character because she has a flaw that she overcomes. That's true strength. That's true greatness. When the character doesn't have a flaw, That's what you call a Mary Sue. That's Rey in the new Star Wars films. It's Captain Marvel. People call them strong female leads, but they're weak characters because they don't face any adversity. Tarantino knew how to write strong female characters, and I admire him for that, and more people need to get back to that type of writing. So that's my rant about the bride as a character. Amazing character. Amazing character. I love her character so much. But I want to talk a little bit more about the film itself. It's separated into 2 volumes, and I love them both for different reasons. The first volume is the action-packed volume, and the second volume is the emotional conclusion of the story. They're both flawed when they're separate, because the first film is all action, no emotion, and the second film is mostly emotion, not a lot of action. But when you watch them together, when you bring them together into one big experience, they complete each other. And you have a complete experience, and that complete experience is at the top of my list. Of course, that makes the film really long, but every single scene is drenched with atmosphere, with world building, and storytelling, exquisite storytelling, that I don't mind just experiencing the world. The film could be 5 hours long. I don't care if the scenes just keep being drenched with the atmosphere that this film has. You have just like this anime scene at the middle of the film that explains the backstory of one of the characters the bride wants to kill. It's just so atmospheric. Everything works. The music, the visuals, the action scenes. The film is so rich with style, and the soundtrack is kick-ass as well. Just the richness of it. Everything in this film engages you when you watch it. You also have, just scenes that seem very unremarkable, but they're still there, and they still help build the world, like the scene where she goes to Japan to get the samurai sword from Hattori Hanzo. You don't really need it, or you don't need it to be long, but it's there, and it adds to the atmosphere and the storytelling and the world building. And I know I'm repeating myself, but I just love this film so much that I'm sometimes lost for words. Kill Bill is my favorite Tarantino film, and I think it fully deserves to be placed at number 1 on my list. This is it for the video. Thank you so much for watching, for listening. Let me know what you think about it. I really enjoyed making it, so I would love doing it for more filmmakers, for more directors, maybe even some franchises and studios later down the road. I like ranking movies. I think it's a fun way to talk about them. Let me know which directors or other ranking videos you'd like me to do in the future. And Tarantino, let me know if you wanna have dinner or a cup of coffee. I'm buying. All right. Thank you so much, guys. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, leave a comment. Any interaction at all would be hugely appreciated. And I'll see you all next time. Have a good one.